Students, am I audible?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So today we're going to revise the chapter that is how do organisms reproduce. But before we do the revision, see, we're going to do it in a different way, wherein you people tell me, like I'll be asking you some questions, and you people will be telling me the answers, and we'll see if you remember or not, and then I'll teach you the topic. Okay?
Okay.
Hmm. So when we talk about reproduction, what are the two types of reproduction, students?
Ma'am, asexual and asexual, ma'am.
Very good. What is the difference in between them?
I mean, sexual reproduction, ma'am, two parents are involved, and ma'am, in asexual, ma'am, only one parent is needed.
Okay, very good. And like amongst the asexual and the sexual reproduction, which one generates clones as offspring? Clone.
Asexual, ma'am.
Very good. And in which type of reproduction variation arise?
Sexual.
Abdul, you also answer.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. After that, tell me. Okay, what is fission? Like normal fission, how would you describe it?
Can you repeat, ma'am? Your voice is lagging.
My question is, what is fission?
I'm a fission, ma'am. Like, what do you say?
Yeah, like what happens in that kind of reproduction?
Yeah. Ma'am, like the splitting of unicellular organisms, ma'am.
Hmm. First, the genetic material divides and then the cell divides, isn't it?
Okay. Oh, yeah.
What are the two types of fission? Yes, students, what are the two types of fissions?
Ma'am, binary fission, ma'am.
Yes, and?
And I forgot the other one. Multiple fission,
Multiple.
ma'am.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Out of the binary fission and multiple fission, which takes place under unfavorable condition?
I'm a binary, ma'am.
Binary. No, binary takes place in
Oh,
favorable
it is
condition.
favorable, yeah. So multiple fission.
Yeah, multiple fission takes place in which organism?
Uh, like amoeba, ma'am.
No. Multiple, not binary.
Plasmodium.
Plasmodium. Yes. Remember that multiple fission, it takes place in the case of plasmodium. All right. Okay. Now tell me, what is the difference between regeneration and fragmentation?
Ma'am, like regeneration, ma'am. Like if a limb gets cut off, like for example, lizard, ma'am. When a tail gets cut off, ma'am, it regenerates within like a few weeks or months.
Then what is fragmentation?
Fragmentation, ma'am.
Hmm?
Like what do you say? When an organism breaks down into several fragments.
Hmm. And then each of those fragments develop into the
Yeah, it
whole
develops
organism.
into its own
So
individual.
what is the difference in between them? Whatever you told me about both of these, it's correct. But what is the difference? Like how are they different from each other? Anyone? How are fragmentation and regeneration different from each other? See, I'll tell you. Fragmentation, it is a routine procedure, whereas regeneration, it is an ability, meaning whenever the organism will by chance get cut into pieces, each of those pieces will turn into new organisms. But fragmentation, it's not an ability, it's a method. Like once maturation of Spirogyra takes place, then only fragmentation happens. Clear?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Now talking about the spore formation. So this is when, mostly in the case of fungi. Here, the sporangia, which is a structure that contains spores, that is formed, and when the sporangia or the spores are liberated, and as soon as they come in contact with a suitable substrate, then they develop into the new organism. So mostly the spore formation will be taking place in the case of these fungus like Rhizopus, Mucor. Clear, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, who can explain the difference between haploid and diploid to me, students? The
Can you
difference
repeat?
between haploid and diploid. Yes. Anyone? What is the difference between haploid and diploid, or what is it? No one. The organism that has one set of chromosomes, we call them as haploid. And the ones that have two sets of chromosomes, we call them as diploid. So what about the gametes? Gametes are haploid or diploid?
Haploid.
Yes. Why are you in a doubt? Gametes will always be haploid. Can someone tell me why? Aisha, can you tell me why?
What, ma'am?
Why will the gametes always be haploid? See, the gametes will always be haploid. It's because when two haploid gametes fuse, it results into the formation of a diploid zygote. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, moving forward, when we talk about vegetative propagation, can someone explain what is vegetative propagation? See, vegetative propagation is a method in which the vegetative parts of this particular plant, right? Whether we talk about the roots, stems, or leaves, these are the vegetative parts, meaning the parts that are not involved in reproduction process. So we call that as vegetative propagation. Clear?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, there are certain artificial methods of vegetative propagation as well, such as cutting, layering, and grafting. So when we talk about cutting, so in this case, the stem, leaf, or root, that part is cut and planted into the soil, and then that grows into a plant. So we are using the plant part, and we are actually, like, this is man-made, right? Human interference is there. That is why we call it as the artificial vegetative propagation. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Then comes layering. Now, layering here, basically, you take a branch or the root and like take that part of the stem and you bend it to the ground, and then it starts developing the roots and then forms a new plant attached to the parent plant. Lastly, there is the grafting. So here, two different plants are cut at an angle and then they are joined together and made to be grown as one. Now, wax paper or some sort of paper is wrapped around them so that the cells will be combining with each other so as to form one plant. Clear, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, moving forward, talking about the advantages of the asexual reproduction. Now, we know that since this particular reproduction, it's like the most easiest, the most simplest one. So, it will take less time and it will take like less complication also because it's like simple procedure. So, that is how it is basically going to be happening. Clear, students?
Yes, ma'am.
No
Apart from
gametes are
that,
involved.
yes. Ask
No
again, please.
gametes are in. Ma'am, I'm saying
Yeah.
that no gametes are removed.
Yeah, no gametes are involved. So, henceforth, what will happen is that they will be easily, like, since no gamete formation or gamete fusion is involved, so it is less complicated. And here, since the offsprings are exact copies of the parents, so no, you can say the parental characteristics, they are preserved. Moving forward, there is this sexual reproduction in the flowering plants. So when we talk about the flowering plants, so in them, we know that flower is the reproductive part of the plant. Why? Because it contains, what is the female reproductive part of the flower called as, students? It's called as the gynoecium. And one unit of gynoecium is called as the pistil or the carp. Now, the pistil or the carpel, it has three parts. That is stigma, style, and ovary. Whereas the male reproductive part, which is the androecium, one unit of that androecium is called as the stamen. And stamen has how many parts, students? Tell me, the stamen is made up of how many parts?
3 parts, ma'am.
Okay, 3 parts. What are they?
Isn't it 4 parts, ma'am?
2 parts, anther and the
Oh,
filament.
okay. Uh,
Okay, now moving forward, talking about the flower in terms of its sexuality, whether it has the male like parts or the females or both of them together. So the flower can be unisexual or bisexual. Unisexual, uni means one. So unisexual is when the flower will either contain the pistil or it will contain the stamen. For example, papaya, watermelon. And when we talk about bisexual flowers, so here the flowers that contain both the stamen and the pistil together, we call it as the bisexual flower, like hibiscus, mustard. Now, the stamen is the male reproductive part. And tell me, students, what are the male gametes of a flower? Tell me, students, what are the male gametes of a flower? No one knows. The male gametes of a flower, they are pollen grains. Clear? Now, the pollen grains are made inside the anther of the male reproductive part. So, the stamen, it has 2 parts, anther and the filament. Now, moving forward, when we talk about the pistil or the carpel, like I said, 3 parts are there, stigma, style, and ovary. So, stigma is the landing platform where the pollen comes and lands. Then it travels through the style and ultimately reaches the ovary. Now, inside the ovary, ovules are present, and the ovule, they contain the egg cell, and the egg cell is the female reproductive gamete. Now, we know the process wherein the male gametes will be transferred to the female gametes. That process is called as pollination. So here, it can either be self-pollination or cross-pollination. Now, self-pollination is when the pollen grain is transferred to the stigma of the same flower. When it is taking place in the same flower, we call it as self-pollination. And when it takes place in the case of like different flower, different plant, then we can say that it is cross-pollination. Clear, students?
Yes.
Now, like the pollens, they don't have wings. They can't fly on their own. So they need certain agents to bring about the pollination. And those agents are called as pollinators. So the pollinators, they are of two types, biotic and abiotic. Now, biotic pollinators are the living organisms that act like a pollinator. Abiotic ones are the non-living organisms that act like a pollinator. So wind and water, since they are non-living, so they will be abiotic pollinator, and the animals like the insects, particularly the honeybee, so it will be a living pollinator, meaning a biotic pollinator. Now, when the pollen lands on the stigma, pollen tube germination takes place, as a result of which the male gamete travels to the egg cell to get fused. And when the male gamete fuses with the female gamete, this process is called as fertilization. And at the end of fertilization, a diploid zygote is formed. Diploid means having two sets of chromosomes. Now, after the fertilization has been done, then what will happen? The zygote will divide to form the embryo. The ovule will mature into a seed and the ovary will become the fruit. And we know that since the seed are present inside the fruit, so the ovule will be present inside the ovary. And after this whole entire thing is done, then the petals, the sepals, the stamen, and the style, it falls off because it's now no more needed. So this much is clear to you all, students. Do you people have any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Anything you people want to ask me?
No, ma'am.
All right. Now moving forward, talking about seed germination. Now we know that because of the seed only, we can grow a new plant. So the process wherein the little plant or a seedling develops from a seed, that process is called as seed germination. Now always remember that it will take place under the appropriate conditions, meaning appropriate temperature, pressure, pH, water, all of these things must be required. Now, when we talk about the seed, now the seed has certain parts also, like the cotyledons. So, if it is a monocot seed, it will have one cotyledon and it will not be able to split into two. Whereas when we talk about a dicot seed, so it will have two cotyledons and we can split it into two parts. Now, one of the most important things that you people should remember will be plumule and radicle. Now, plumule and radicle are the parts of the seed. The plumule will give rise to the shoot of the plant and the radicle will give rise to the root of the plant. Clear, students? Any doubts?
No,
Yes or no? All right. Now talking about the reproductions in the case of human beings. So now the male reproductive system. Tell me, students, give me one answer. Why are the testes situated outside the abdominal cavity? Why not inside?
Ma'am, because sperms require a lower temperature to come out.
To?
Come out.
No, not to come out. They require a lower temperature to be formed. Sperm will not be formed if a higher temperature, like body temperature, like at body temperature, the sperm cannot be formed. Clear?
Yes.
That is why. And the normal body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. So at 37 degrees Celsius, the sperms could not be formed. So that is why they have to be formed at a lower temperature. Clear?
Yes.
All right. Now moving forward, talking about the male reproductive system. Tell me, students, what is the function of the reproductive glands? Yes, what is the function of reproductive glands? The function of reproductive gland is to provide the fluid in which the sperms would swim. Also, it provides nourishment to the sperm. Clear?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Now, the male external genitalia is the penis. So, after the sperm has been formed, it will be delivered through the penis only. Now, remember one thing, that the pathway from where the sperm and the urine is released, it's the same. That is the urethra. Now, moving forward, talking about the female reproductive system. So, here the primary sex organ is the ovary. The primary sex organ in the case of male is the testes, and in the case of females, it's the ovaries. Now, what happens is that the ovaries, they have thousands and thousands of immature eggs present in it. And once the girl hits puberty, then the immature egg, they start maturing, after which they are like sort of descended every month, and it waits in the fallopian tube so as to be fertilized. Now, when we talk about this particular fallopian tube, so imagine it or remember it like the site of fertilization also. So this is where fertilization takes place. Now, uterus here, basically after the conceiving is done, meaning the egg fuses and this like egg and the sperm fuses. So then what happens is that it goes and gets implanted at the uterus only. Clear, students? Now again, fertilization in the case of human beings will also be the same thing, wherein the fusion of the male gamete takes place with the female gamete in order to form the diploid zygote. Now here the sperm, it travels into the vaginal passage by the process of the sexual intercourse, and then it goes to the fallopian tube so as to get fused. Then it fuses and forms the zygote, and then the zygote travels and becomes the embryo, and then the embryo goes and gets implanted in the uterus, and this process is called as implantation. Now talking about placenta. So placenta is that part of the it's like a temporary part of the uterus wherein it will supply all the nutrients and all the oxygen and everything from the mother to the fetus, and it will be transported or supplied through the placenta only. Now, blood spaces surround the villi, and like villi, these are the finger-like projections that are present towards the embryo side, and they will be responsible for transportation of nutrients and oxygen. Now, the time period for which the human pregnancy would last, we call it as the gestation period, and it is 9 months. And after these 9 months are completed, now the birth will take place, which will lead, like once the child is ready, it's fully developed, then it will be expelled out of the body through the vagina, and that is called as the birth. Now, during this time, the uterus undergoes rhythmic contraction, as a result of which the child or the baby is expelled out. Moving forward, like I said, that every single month, the egg waits in the fallopian tube so as to get fertilized. Now, if the fertilization doesn't take place, so the egg, along with like the unfertilized egg, along with the blood and the mucus of the uterus, they are expelled through the vagina, and this is expelled in the form of blood. Bleeding happens, and that is for 2 to 8 days. That is what we call as menstruation or menstrual flow. Now, talking about reproductive health. Now, reproductive health, we know that there are certain diseases that can be transmitted because of the sexual intercourse. And those diseases are called as sexually transmitted diseases. Now, some of the diseases can be because of bacteria and some can be because of viruses. Now, bacterial sexual diseases would be gonorrhea and syphilis. Viral sexual diseases would be, the most important one here to remember is the AIDS, that is caused by HIV. Now, AIDS stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome, whereas the HIV stands for Human Immunovirus. Now, how can it be prevented? It can be prevented by, first of all, spreading awareness, and secondly, by performing safe sex by the use of condoms. So this is the prevention of the STDs. Now, let us talk about the contraceptive methods. Now, contraceptive methods, these are the particular methods that are used to avoid unwanted pregnancies. So when conceiving has to be avoided, then the contraceptive methods are used. The first kind of method is the mechanical barrier, or you can also call it as physical barrier. So here, the sperms are physically stopped from reaching the egg, and that is by the use of condoms. So condom is a latex-made rubber-like structure which is made to be worn on the penis so as to cover the penis during the sexual act. The second kind of contraceptive are the pills. That is the chemical method of contraception. So in this method, what happens is that the pills or sort of medicines are taken which contains the hormones composition, and what it does is that it changes the hormonal balance of the body of the female, and it stops the release of ova from the ovary. Now, since they are chemicals, they are pills, so they would have some sort of side effects as well, such as irregular menstrual cycle. The third one is loop or copper T. Here, it is also a chemical method and they are placed in the uterus. So, they are intrauterine devices. What are they? Tell me, repeat it. What are they?
Intrauterine device.
Yes, they are intrauterine devices. Now, since they are externally, from the external source, they are placed inside the uterus. So, they cause the irritation of the uterus as a side effect. Now, the permanent method of contraception, the irreversible, like this can't be reversed and it is permanent. So, that is a surgical method. In the case of males, the vas deferens is blocked. Whereas in the case of females, the fallopian tube is blocked. So in the case of male, the vas deferens is cut and tied up. In the case of female, the fallopian tubes are cut and tied up. So when it is done in the case of male, we call it as vasectomy. And in the case of females, we call it as tubectomy. And these are permanent methods. So if a couple wants to have child, now they can't. Now, talking about abortion. Now, abortion is when, in the case of unwanted pregnancies, right? In the case of assault or maybe unprotected coitus. So the pregnancy has been there now. Like if a person wants to remove it. So the surgical removal of the unwanted pregnancy is called as induced abortion. Clear, students? Yes, any doubts?
No.
All right. So this was all there is to know about this particular chapter, that is how do organisms reproduce. Now tell me if you have any doubts, anything that comes to your mind.
No, ma'am.
All of your doubts are clear. So if someone will take your viva, you will be able to answer. Hmm? You will be able to answer or not? Yes or no?
Yes.
What about the others? You won't be able to answer.
Yes.
Okay. Now we will solve some questions. Okay, can you all see the screen, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now you people take out your page and then you can start solving these MCQs. Now these are from NCERT exemplar, okay? So you solve these questions and tell me if you have any doubts.
Done, ma'am.
All of you are done?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Done, ma'am.